Hello everyone, it's time again for another reaction to Christians of TikTok. But unlike in part 1, we're not responding to a single person, but rather several people, all with a common goal: trying to prove the Bible is true. Will they convert me? Let's find out. Here's a video from Justin Brierley, who has almost 250,000 followers, and he's going to explain why we should believe a virgin can give birth.
Isn't the story of Jesus' virgin birth just a fairy tale? No, and here's 3 reasons. 1. The birth narratives of Matthew and Luke are told as history. Luke says he's interviewed the people close to the events to write an orderly account.
Yes, because a document told as history can never be faked, right? As long as the document claims to be factual, it must be correct. If that's your bar for proof, what's stopping you from becoming a Mormon? In the Mormon faith, 3 men provided a written statement called the Testimony of 3 Witnesses, which claimed they all saw an angel holding the golden plates from which Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, translated the Book of Mormon. So hey, they were close to the event, they wrote an orderly account, so following your logic, why not believe them? Furthermore, how would the people Luke allegedly interviewed even know that Mary was a virgin? What tests could they have possibly done to verify that? Were they watching her 24/7 to make sure she never did the deed? Which one is more likely? That Mary is the only case in all of human history of a virgin getting pregnant? Or that she's simply another case of sex out of wedlock and then lying about what happened?
You are not.
And the story is embedded in places and historical events that stack up.
Okay, so is Saving Private Ryan, James Cameron's Titanic, The Grapes of Wrath, A Tale of Two Cities. A story taking place in a real location and during a real event doesn't make the story true. And if the story stacks up as you claim, why are there contradictions between the Gospels? For example, did Jesus heal 2 blind men, or just 1? Who was Joseph's father, Jacob or Heli? How many women went to the tomb? 1, 2, 3, or at least 5? Did the women tell people what they saw at the tomb, or not? How many contradictions are we supposed to put up with before we admit these authors are not reliable?
2. Why would you make up an unplanned pregnancy? Jesus was conceived before Joseph and Mary were married. That would have been a scandal in that day and age.
I don't know, Justin. Why would you make up being a Nigerian prince? Why would you make up being a natural bodybuilder? Why would you make up going to heaven? People make things up because some people will believe them. And if people living now can believe unfounded claims, why couldn't poor, illiterate people living 2,000 years ago? Especially when there were already miracle birth stories that were believed at that time. And as for it being a scandal, well, think about how many scandals televangelists have been in, and then tell me how often they've been career-ending.
3. If I was telling a story about God becoming human, he'd be a mighty king in a palace. But at Christmas, God came as a baby, born to a poor couple in a borrowed stable, and spent the rest of his life living among the most marginalised. You know what? If there is a God and he came in person, I think that story makes more sense than anything I could make up.
Justin, you're describing one of the most common story genres of all time, the hero's journey. A character goes on a grand adventure, experiencing trials along the way, until ultimately achieving victory. Loads of popular fiction follows this formula: Star Wars, Spider-Man, Dragon Ball, Shrek, the list goes on. It is a time-tested model for building a following. And this story genre can be found even before Jesus, like in Hercules, another story about the son of a deity being born to a mortal woman and dedicating his life to fighting evil. So with all of this in mind, it may not shock you that many modern scholars admit there's not much of a historical foundation for this story. You have to either take it on faith, or you have to interpret it metaphorically. Personally, I follow Carl Sagan's motto that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So let's move on to another video and see if we can find it. How about we look at BigNik, who has over 2 million followers. BigNik used to be a star on Vine where he'd make short comedy sketches, but then he became a born-again Christian, and now he makes a different kind of comedy.
Is God sending us a warning sign from the heavens right now? The Dead Sea, which is a major biblical location, just turned blood red.
You know, it's always a good start to a video when they can't even read the headline properly. It doesn't say the Dead Sea, but a pool of water near the Dead Sea. But more importantly, there are plenty of reasons why a body of water may turn red. It could be from a red algae bloom like that in Australia. It could be from iron oxide like in the Tinto River. It could have been from color dye like how they dye the Chicago River. Or the cause it ended up being, which was the mineral manganese. Yet despite all the evidence-based possibilities for water turning red, BigNik goes with the one we have no evidence of.
In Luke 21:11, when Jesus is speaking about the end of the world, he talks about there being great signs from heaven. We are living in the end times. It's not too late to repent and give your life to Jesus Christ. Amen.
Now, notice how vague these great signs are. Earthquakes, famines, pestilences, so things that were already happening before the Bible was even written. It's like if I wrote a book predicting a mass shooting and then one happened. That doesn't make me a prophet, that makes me an American. People have been predicting the end of the world for centuries now. Every time they say it's going to be soon, but soon keeps getting pushed further and further and further down the road.
God is going to come back and judge the living and the dead.
When's he coming back?
Some people say soon.
How long have they been saying soon?
But don't worry, Nick. I'm sure the former Vine star will finally get it right. Here's a video from the TikToker Kwabs Atuahene, who has over 1 million followers, and he's going to show us proof the Bible is 100% true. The nails used to crucify Jesus, one of David's palaces, the remains of Noah's Ark, Dead Sea Scrolls, and the home of Jesus. Wow. 5 images off Google. I'm sure that if we look into them one by one, there won't be any missing context, right? While the researcher who examined these nails says they were likely used in a crucifixion, he does not say this means they were used on Jesus. Keep in mind that, for centuries, crucifixion was a common mode of execution, taking the lives of thousands of people. Finding a pair of old nails and assuming they were used on Jesus is like finding an old guitar and assuming it was used by Elvis. And other researchers remain skeptical of them being used in a crucifixion. Moving on, the claim that this was King David's palace is heavily disputed, with critics pointing out that it could have belonged to other groups in the area. So again, more speculation, not concrete proof. Likewise, the claim of this being Noah's Ark is also disputed, with geologists finding that it's a natural formation. Sure, it may look like a boat, but these rocks look like an elephant. Geology can be weird. It's also worth noting this isn't the first time someone has claimed to have found Noah's Ark. Like the predictions of the end of the world, people have been claiming they found the real Noah's Ark for centuries now, with dubious evidence every time. Archaeologist Paul Zemansky once said, "I don't know of any expedition that ever went looking for the Ark and didn't find it." As for the Dead Sea Scrolls, well, sure, they're neat artifacts, but how are they proof? Does finding a tablet from ancient Egypt prove Egyptian mythology? Does finding a tablet from ancient Greece prove Greek mythology? Or is it only proof when it belongs to your religion? And finally, there's the so-called home of Jesus. While the researcher of this home, Ken Dark, claims this could be where Jesus grew up, he makes it clear that it's impossible to know for certain.
It could be, but it needn't be.
Got it.
It's 50-50, I suppose, because we have no idea, really, how likely it is that this house really was where Jesus grew up.
But let's say that all of these artifacts were undoubtedly from the Bible. This still wouldn't make the Bible 100% true. This is an example of the fallacy of composition. It's where you falsely assume that something must be true of the entire thing just because it is true for part of the thing. I refer back to my point about historical fiction. A story can take place in a real location and during a real event, but still be fake overall. Finally, here's a video from Aatiqah J, who has over 1 million followers, and here's some of the airtight logic she's feeding them.
People be like, Christianity is man-made. Okay, well then why does everything about it go against man's desires?
Yeah, because only Christianity tells you to control your desires. In Judaism and Hinduism, you can just do whatever you want. Islam famously has no rules at all. That's a uniquely Christian concept. All joking aside though, just because Christianity goes against some desires doesn't mean it goes against all of them. There are many desires that Christianity appeals to, but for brevity's sake, I'll show you 3. Number 1, one of our core desires is safety. We want to be protected from war, famine, disease, dangerous weather, anything posing a threat to your life. But 2,000 years ago, before the advent of modern science, there were far fewer ways to account for these dangers. You were largely at the mercy of your environment. So it would have been emotionally comforting to believe in a powerful being who loves you, is watching over you, and who you can contact for help. Which is why it's not surprising that poorer countries tend to be more religious, and why when countries develop and quality of life goes up, religion becomes less important. The training wheels can come off. In short, when you change the environment, you change behavior. Number 2, people desire answers. Research has found that uncertainty can breed anxiety. We have a fear of the unknown. And 2,000 years ago, far more things about our world were beyond our comprehension, so any ideology claiming to fill the gaps in our knowledge would have been appealing, regardless of whether or not their answers were correct. Where does snow come from? It's stored by God. Why is that person acting strange? They're possessed by a demon. Why do snails leave a trail behind? Because they're melting. But as science gradually gave us the correct answers, verses which were once taken literally, coincidentally became metaphorical. And to those who object by saying there are still things unanswered by science, I ask you this question. Can you name me one thing that was once answered by science that has been replaced with an answer from religion? And thirdly, people desire reward. It is a driving force behind our behavior. We consume media for the reward of entertainment or education. We work out for the reward of getting in shape. We go to college for the reward of a high-paying job. But what if someone didn't only offer you a reward, but the reward? Eternal pleasure. If people will spend years in college to earn a high-paying job, how long would someone spend to earn eternal pleasure?
Dopamine is not about pleasure, it's about the anticipation of pleasure. It's about the pursuit of happiness rather than happiness itself. So in this study, you press the lever the right number of times, you get reward. Do the work, you get a reward 100% of the time. That's how it works. Now instead shift to where you get the reward only 50% of the time. You do the work, and only about half the time you get the reward. So what happens to dopamine levels there? This is what they do. They go through the roof. Because what have you just done? You've introduced the word maybe into the equation. And maybe is addictive like nothing else out there. And what we see is this astonishing ability of humans to keep those dopamine levels up for decades and decades waiting for the reward. And in the most bizarre, unique realm of this in humans, sometimes we could maintain it with a belief system where the reward doesn't come in our lifetime. The reward comes after our death.
With all of the desires that religion can play on, just imagine what a person might say to maintain their belief in it. If you enjoyed this video and want me to expose more from TikTok, please subscribe, ring the bell, and give this video a thumbs up. I also recommend watching Christians of TikTok Part 1, which I'll have linked on screen. And last but not least, if you want to help support my videos like these amazing people, please consider joining me over on Patreon. Any amount you can give is greatly appreciated. But until next time, have a great day.